Hello, what is up guys? EvilDuoSarm here today, back with another Unreal Engine 4 tutorial. So I have not put one of these out in a long time, and this is a continuation of our 2D side-scroller tutorial, the Endless Runner tutorial that I abruptly stopped like several months ago. Decided I would put out a few more videos in the series, so you can expect those over the next few days. But anyway, in this episode, what we're going to do is show you how to add a score ticker, or a ticker that basically takes the amount of time that the player has been alive and converts it to a score. We'll also show you how to save the high score of a player, basically something to give our player something to shoot for. Now, if you wanted to do score a different way, like with pickups or something like that, we've already showed you how to go ahead and make pickups in this game, in this tutorial series for the main game. So you can go ahead and do that. Just take that and have it add to a score value instead of using the time that you're going to see in this video. At any rate, let's get started and let's head on over to the player character itself. So if you remember, we created a separate runner character for this tutorial for the Endless Runner game mode itself, the Endless Runner side scroller. In the Endless Runner side scroller, you're going to want to navigate to the event tick section right here. Event tick basically takes over the time of the game and mixes it with the frames per second of the display, basically gives you a time for the player being alive. If you have no idea where this is on our blueprint, since it has gotten rather cluttered, you can hit find results down here and just type in event tick. Hit search, double click it, and it will show you where the event tick is. It will pop it right there. So if you're ever lost, go ahead and search for the node that you're looking for right here. What we need to do from the event tick is we need to start generating a score based on the time that the player's been alive. To do that, we need to add a variable. So on the left side over here where it says variables, go ahead and click on plus variable and title our variable score. Go ahead and hit enter on that, and click on the variable to open it up on the right side of the screen up here. Up here in the top right corner of your screen, you're going to go ahead and click on the variable type and change it to a float. Since the delta seconds from event tick is recorded in a float, we need to make sure that this variable is a float. We'll convert it to an integer after. After you've set it to being a float, go ahead and hit compile and save. Now what we want to do is we want to add the time that has passed since the last frame, the delta seconds, to the score value starting at 0, and we want to keep doing that every time the frame changes, basically is what we're doing with this event tick. So to do that, we're going to go ahead and hit control on our score variable, click and drag. That will get the score. Likewise, you can just right click and type in score and then hit get score, and it would bring up the same exact node. What we're going to do next is we're going to take the delta seconds and we're going to add that, so press the plus key on the keyboard, float plus float to the score. This is going to add the change in time between the last frame to the score, basically incrementing the score upwards by the number of frames and the time between those frames. Essentially, since it's frames per second, we're adding how many frames per second, doing the math. It's basically counting out the number of seconds that the person has been alive. We now want to set this new sum to the score value so that this continues to increment. So to do that, hold down the Alt key on the keyboard, left click on score and drag it out. This will bring up the set score node. Go ahead and drag this pin into this current score, connect our event tick over here, and bring this node up into our initial execute that starts dealing with our animation handling that we did earlier in the series. Compile and save, and we are set with the Endless Runner blueprint for now. We'll be coming back to this in a few minutes. Now we need to create the widget that the player is going to see when they're interacting with the score. To do that, navigate down to widgets in the bottom and click on the HUD. We've already created this in other parts of the series as well. Double click HUD to open it up. We need to make the panel that is going to dictate the score as well as the high score to the player. To do that, we need a border. So in the palettes in the top left corner, type in border. Go ahead and click on the border and just drag it anywhere down here. We're going to put it in the bottom right corner. Obviously, you could put this wherever you want it. Since the text that's going to pop up is going to be white in color, we need to change this background color. To do that, scroll down. On the right side here where you see appearance, look for tint, and on tint, just change it to whatever. We're going to move it to like this grayish black color. Go ahead and click OK. We now need to partition this into separate sections. To do that, type in vertical box. Click the vertical box and drag it onto border down below, this border that we just dropped down here. This will split it into a vertical box. We then need two horizontal boxes, so horizontal box. Click the horizontal box, drag it down into the vertical box, click horizontal box once again, drag it onto the vertical box. What has this done? It's given us two vertical boxes with a horizontal box across. Each horizontal box needs two things of text. So we're just going to go ahead and type in text into the search bar up here. Drag text, drag text. Once again, drag text, drag text. So what you should see when you've completed this successfully is something that looks like this. You've got a border with a vertical box cascading off of that. From the vertical box, we have two horizontal boxes, and each horizontal box has a text block associated with it. So this is basically split us into four little quadrants. If we wanted to clean this up a bit, go ahead and click on vertical box, click center, center. Click on the first horizontal box, center, center. Click on the next horizontal box, center, center. Each text box, you guessed it, center, 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 and center, center. Now we need to label each of these text boxes. To do that, click on the first text box of the first horizontal box where it says content text over on the right side of the screen. Go ahead and type in score. This top side will be our score value. Next, on the second horizontal box below that, go ahead and type in high score. Below this, we will record the player's high score. So now if we look at our little box widget that we've got down here, we've got score and we have high score. If you want to make it a little bit more legible, you could add a colon and then some spaces, as well as with the high score, add a colon and then some spaces. So now you have a bit of a space between the two text blocks. The next thing we're going to do is bind the player's current score for the auto runner. So to do that, click on the text block next to the score value and go ahead and click bind on the right of text. What we're going to do is create a new binding, so go ahead and hit bind, create binding. We need to get that score value from our endless runner character, and in order to do that, we're going to type in get player character. This will get whatever the character is being played by the player. Off of this value right here, drag cast to endless runner side scroller character. It is the top option if you've been naming these the way I have, if you're using the same endless runner side scroller character that we've been using in the series. Go ahead and click on that, and that will bring up the endless runner side scroller character. We can drag off this get text 5 now and drag it into this, and this will start to initiate our chain. Off of the endless runner side scroll character, we want to get score, which is the variable that we created earlier. We then want to truncate this because we want an integer. We don't want the endless float carrying on in the score here. So just go ahead and type in truncate. This will turn this float into an integer, and then we can return that integer right into the return node. Off of the cast to endless runner here, we're going to go ahead and drag off this and hit return node. Compile and save, and if we return to the endless runner map and go ahead and hit play, you will see that the score begins to increment up by 1 every single second. So the longer that the player stays alive, the more that that score will increment. With that out of the way, we need to set up the high score now. So to do that, we need to actually create a high score variable in the save game. So if we go to our main page here and scroll down to the bottom where we created a save game, we have the file called save game YouTube. Double click on save game YouTube and look at our variables over here. I actually already created a high score variable when I was testing this to make sure that it worked. So we're just going to go ahead and delete that, and we're going to create a new variable. The new variable, we're just going to call it high score. So type in high score onto this. It needs to be an integer, compile, and save. We now have the high score variable in our save game, so whenever we cast the save game, we can save the variable. Hopping back over to our HUD and hopping back over to the designer. If we click on the second text block, the one we need to define as the high score, we can go ahead and click the bind option over on the right side of the screen and create a new binding. We're going to do this the very lazy way, but I'll run you through it so you understand what's happening, since you probably haven't seen one of these in a while. We're going to take the save system that we already created in one of our earlier files, this getText2, and just straight up copy paste it. So I'm going to copy paste it right now, and then I'll run it through, and you can go ahead and copy it yourself if you want to. So Control-C, Control-V. If you already have these saved, you're good to go. But basically what we're going to do is we're going to take this getText6 node and drag it into the create save game object. Whenever you're loading or saving in Unreal Engine 4, you need to have this exact line of code right here every single time. So it's going to become muscle memory. You're going to have it on a clipboard. You're going to be able to just copy paste it and change the very few things that you need to do. The first thing we need to do is create a save game object. This tells us which save file we're pulling from. If you had multiple characters, multiple players with different save files, you would have to select it from here. Since we only have the one file, the save game YouTube file, it's really simple. Just pick the save game YouTube file. After that, you can set it to a variable if you would like. Since we already set it up as a variable the first time we did this, we can just copy paste it. You actually don't need to do this step anymore. The next thing we need to do is find out if a save game exists. Is there a save game in this slot? Which is the same slot that we pulled from over here. If there's already something there, which there should be since we've already saved to this file when we started the game, then continue with the chain. If not, create the thing, and then we're going to re-continue with the chain when it tries to do it a second time over here. So we don't need to worry about continuing this since this is going to pop on the tick. Next, we need to load that save game that we just checked for, cast to the save game to get the save game contents. Once again, we can skip this step. We can just pull off of this node if we want, or if you want to have the variable to access it elsewhere in the blueprint, you can create a separate variable right here. And now what we need to do is we need to target the high score value. So what we're going to do is drag off of this, and we're going to type get high score, which is the variable that we just created, Delete the money value because that's the one that we pulled it from. Drag this high score value into the to text here, which we've just copied. If we don't have that to text here, we can take this return node that was already included on the blueprint and drag the high score variable into this. After that, we save the game. Since we've pulled something from it, we want to save the state of the save game and connect this back into the return node. So once again, when we first opened it up, we had this get text and we had this return node. So I didn't pull this out of anywhere magical. It's not like I just made this appear. This node was already here. I know that's going to be confusing the way that we went about this. If you had to build this all over on your own though, this is the full path. So just rewind the video and copy the nodes exactly. If we go ahead and hit compile save, head back into our endless runner and click play, you will see that our high score is set to 0 because we aren't saving it. If we reset, the high score stays at 0 because we have no way to save this value. So now we need to create the system that's going to save the variable. So to do that, we're going to navigate back into the HUD and highlight the code that we just created because saving and loading is like exactly the same in Unreal Engine 4. Like I said, you're going to have this on a clipboard. You're always going to be using it for everything. Highlight this big old chain of code that we created, Control C, and go ahead and hop back into our endless runner character. Navigate to the event graph, and we're looking for the reset node, the button that we press to reset, which in this case we set up to be R. So if you don't know where it is, you can just go ahead and find results and just type in the letter R. Hit enter. It will show the R button somewhere along this list. You just have to scroll down and find it. But anyway, the R key right here resets our game. We have it set to reload the entire level. What we're going to do is before we open that new level is we're going to save that score. So to do that, just go ahead and Control V to drop in the score here. Now this is a huge file and gets really frustrating to deal with and it kind of blocks a lot of stuff. So what we're going to do is right click this and we're going to collapse it to a function. This is going to give us an input-output, really simple save function that we can use whenever we want, anywhere that we want. To open it up and see its contents, just double click it and it will open up the whole thing. So what this function is going to do is it's going to save that high score value. So what we need to do is scroll all the way to the end of the same exact save file that we just created 2 seconds ago. And instead of getting the high score from the save game thing, what we want to do is we want to set the score. So to do that, we're going to scroll off of this and we're going to type in set high score. Connect the two nodes here to here. Now we need to determine if our current score is higher than the high score that's already on save. So what we're going to do is get high score that's already on the save file, and we're going to compare it to the score that the player currently has. So to do that, just click and drag score, get score, off of the player variables that are over here on the left. We want to know if the player score is greater than the current high score. So let's drag that over the top, drag off of the score, do a greater than symbol, connect the score node in, and connect the high score node in. It will automatically convert the integer into a float for us. Compile and save. Now when we compile save, we're going to get an error because the save game thing doesn't exist on the player character, it only exists in the HUD. You can create this variable over on the left and then just do it like that. Or like I mentioned earlier, you can actually just go ahead and omit this entire variable. We no longer need this in the game. So to do that, control click on all of these nodes that are connected right here to this, drag it into the as save game YouTube, and just go ahead and delete that set variable. Connect this one over here, compile save, that fixes that whole side. If we navigate over to this one, same thing, control click, drag it over here, delete this file. Drag it on in, compile, save. And that fixes all of our problems that we were having. So back over to this high score testing, we need to insert a branch to say if this is true or false. Is the score higher or lower than before? So click the B key and left click to open up a branch. Drag in this right here. So if the player's score currently is greater than the previous high score, we want to set the high score to the current score. So drag off of score, set it to the high score. The branch is what's dictating this. So between the set, we need this branch, and we need to connect the true node here since that's the way we have it set up. If we had it set up opposite-wise, we'd just flip it to the false going into this. But basically, what is this saying? Get the save game, get the score from the save game, get our player's current score. Is the player's current score higher than the previous high score? If it is, set the current score to the new high score and resave the game. Compile and save. If we go back to the endless runner, click play, and look at the score, we will see our score increments up. If we press R to reset the score, it doesn't work because Levi's a dum-dum and forgot to connect the node. If we hop back over to the event graph, you will see that I never connected new function 1. Let's go ahead and take the get current level name, drag it into new function 1, and new function 1 into open level. So before we open the level, after we reset the level by pressing the R key, it's going to go ahead and save this variable. So if we hit compile save, navigate back over to this and click play, we'll see our score increment up to like 2. If we press R, our new high score is 2. If we press R again, our new high score is 4. If we press it before we get to 4, the high score stays as 4. And this will persist until you delete the save file in the folder. Anyway, guys, that is basically it for this video. I wanted to show you how to put together this high score saving system so you can keep track of your score for your player so they have something to shoot for or a best score to achieve. Now, one thing that this doesn't handle, if I could ever get a hole in the floor here, like this one, is if you start to endlessly fall. There's still no kill switch or kill thing in the game to prevent you from just hanging out and falling forever and incrementing your score to infinity. So that's what we're going to do in the next one. We're going to show you how to reset the character forcefully and make them return back to the start of the level. Anyway, guys, I hope you found this video useful. If you did like the video, make sure to leave a like. Check out some of the other videos in the series if you're just catching it now. This is a 20 video series now showing you how to get this far. So if you haven't seen them all, make sure to check it out. And as always, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you at the next stream, video, or wherever I happen to see you. Peace.